Welcome back to High School Backups Podcast. My name is Jake. I'm here with Kyle, and we are doing another round of quarterback evaluations. Today it's going to be Jaren Hall, Max Duggan, and Stetson Bennett, a couple of undersized guys, and Max Duggan, who is the greediest quarterback we've seen since Tim Tebow. But on that note, Kyle, let's get right into it. We're going to start
Let's
with,
go.
we're going to go right in order of the way I said it. It's going to be Jaren Hall, then Max Duggan, then Stetson Bennett. Honestly, when it comes to Jaren Hall, first and foremost, I've got him as a position tier 3, which means anywhere between a third and sixth round pick. I think with his athleticism and his unique combination of athleticism, a quick release, and arm strength, he'll probably go somewhere in the fourth, fifth round. Honestly, his frame concerns you a little bit. He's 6'1", he's 205, he's also 25 years old. Again, he's got a quick release. He's got a lot of athleticism. What weirdly concerned me was that his 2021 tape, he looked more athletic than he did on the 2022 tape. I think he might have been hurt for a lot of the games in 2022, but I still don't think that's an excuse. His deep accuracy seems really good, and he's got good timing on timing throws, which are all pluses. Obviously, you look at 6'1", 205, you're kind of worried about the frame a little bit. And the biggest drawback with Jaren Hall, he has a tendency to float backwards whenever he's faced with pressure, which is going to lead to a lot of turnovers. Unless you're Josh Allen and or Brett Favre and or somebody with that type of arm strength, you can't get away with that. It's going to lead to consistent underthrows, and it's going to end up being turnovers in the NFL. He didn't really have a lot of turnovers in college, but for the most part, when you're doing stuff like that in the NFL, teams tend to take advantage of it. And if you can't sit in the pocket sturdy and throw under pressure, your life is going to be hell in the league. Give me some of your
Yeah.
thoughts.
So quickly looking at it, I don't know how good of BYU's team he had around him, but they didn't have any crazy good
Their
year this
their
year.
wide receiver is actually sick. I forget his name. I think it's Paku or something.
He's not this year's draft class though, is
No,
he?
he's not this year's
Yeah.
draft class, but he's
Would have
actually
thought.
nasty. Like like
Okay,
actually nasty.
so besides him then, but like just looking at who they played, like the only real standout win that he had with the team was Baylor when they were ranked ninth in the country, and they won that in overtime. But
Are you
just
talking
looking at
about this year?
yes, I'm
Okay,
talking
because
about
they
this
beat a
year.
ranked Utah team in 2021 where he played too.
I am talking about this year.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, them playing against ranked Utah, I do have that pulled up also. Like his pressure that you talked about is definitely a concern because if he gets drafted to a team that doesn't have a solid O line in front of him, that drop back is going to lead to a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure results in either underthrown rushes, fumbles, any kind of turnovers you can think of, and that's not something a lot of NFL teams are going to want to take into consideration. Like he is going to be a big risk coming into this year.
No, his mechanics definitely, especially under pressure, need to be fixed. For the most part, when he's clean, he's a former baseball player, I believe. So when he throws the football well, like he throws the ball well. It's most literally every single time he faces pressure up the middle, which is a lot, mind you. He does this thing where essentially he floats back and it's all arm. It's one of the absolute no-nos of NFL quarterbacking unless you're Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes. Like you don't get to do that unless you have that kind of arm strength.
Right.
And also, there's this injury concern. He had two concussions in 2019, a season-ending hip injury in 2020. He was hurt a little bit in 2022. I don't know about 2021 all that much. He also has a tendency to overthrow short routes, which is going to lead to a lot of turnovers in the NFL. Again, this is a dude who hasn't had many turnovers in his collegiate career. I think he had only six interceptions last year. I think that's the number. I think he was like 31 touchdowns and six picks.
Yep.
So his stats are there. I tend not to put too much into the statistical portion of college football because you get guys like Colt Brennan who throw for 50 touchdowns in a random season. And mind you, don't get me wrong, I love my guy Colt, but still, you don't put as much like people make this argument with Will Levis a lot. Like, oh, he didn't have the stats. His stats are trash. Why is he a top 3 quarterback in this class? Well, put on the tape, his arm's strong. He's athletic. He makes a lot of great throws. Oh, by the way, he played in the SEC and his team sucks, so of course his stats aren't going to look good.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's throwing into the tightest windows I've ever seen.
When has Kentucky football ever been good?
Uh,
I'm sure a while ago, to be honest. Like
no,
that's
I
not.
think they were good last year when they had Wandale and Benny. When they had Benny Snell a couple years ago, they were halfway decent. But like when I say good, I mean 7-5, not like 10-2. They were good for Kentucky football.
Okay, they focus a lot on basketball, which I don't blame them. They
They're
have one
much
of the
better at
best.
basketball.
They are much better at basketball.
And honestly, when it comes to Jaren Hall, right? Again, statistically, he looks really good. 31 touchdowns. I think it's 6 interceptions, 5 interceptions,
Yep.
somewhere in that range. I watched specifically the Arkansas, Boise State, and Utah games. Utah from 2021, just to see what the 2021 tape looked like when you have 2 years of starter, 2 years of a starter. You kind of want to get a feel of both.
Hmm.
Against Arkansas again, I thought he looked good. You can see literally the first play of the game, his first drop back. You can see what I'm talking about with the float back into when he's facing pressure. Literally, first thing I noticed. First thing on the tape. His mechanics are bad under pressure. I'm gonna say that right now. He's got this ability, but on the other hand, he has the ability to extend, create plays, make plays outside of the pocket and inside the pocket, which is something again you're gonna want in today's NFL. He's got a quick release. He's able to make plays from the pocket even at that 6'1" frame. It does get a little. You do get a little bit worried about throws over the middle at that 6'1" height. I mean, I think two of the quarterbacks we're going to talk about today, including Stetson Bennett and Jaren Hall, are at that height where you're like, eh. Max Duggan's 6'2", so it's not as much of a concern. I know that's only an inch difference, but it actually does make like a large difference when it comes down to it. Aaron Rodgers, who is 6'2", has struggles seeing over the middle of the field sometimes. That puts it into perspective.
You see it in his
Yeah,
game film all the time too.
all the
So
time.
I was so talking about that Arkansas game. I was actually I saw some of it
Yeah,
when they played this year, and it just looked like their team could just not move the ball down the field at all in the second half.
yeah.
It was like massive struggles, and I'm not sure if that is on him at all, not being able to throw the ball. Was his injury holding him
Yeah, I was
back?
gonna
Like
say he got hurt at the end of the first half there, right?
right, I think so. Yes, if I think it was that game where he was hurt. So like it makes sense, but I just didn't know if that was solely on him. If you think it was on him, if it's on coaching, if it's on
I
the rest
mean,
of the team, like
I think it's Arkansas, and I think they're playing an SEC team that's probably just better than them, and Arkansas just decided to be better when halftime came around. That's probably where I would say. I mean, Arkansas had a team that was led by Drew Sanders, who actually delivered the hit on Jaren Hall that injured Jaren Hall. Mind you, it was a clean hit. He didn't do anything dirty. He's just an athletic freak, and he hits harder than a wrecking ball. So no, honestly, I mean, when it comes to that Arkansas game, I think part of it is on the fact that Jaren Hall was injured and their running game isn't as good as it's been in years past. In 2021, they were a run-heavy football team. In 2022, that wasn't necessarily the case.
mm,
I would equate it to what happened with Georgia, but not as dramatic. So Georgia, Stetson Bennett only threw about 200 passes, 250 passes in 2021, whereas he threw 450 in 2022. So it was kind of a little bit of a Georgia effect where they kind of doubled their passing numbers, but it wasn't
yeah.
that drastic. Honestly, I mean, I wasn't impressed with the Boise State film either, which was from this year. He had 2 picks in that game, and again, he has 2 picks in one game. He throws 5 all year. It's not like a huge different. It's not a huge deal, but again, those tendencies that lead to turnovers showed up. So his first interception in that game is him floating back trying to make a play in the face of pressure and throwing up a lob that gets picked, which I think will happen more and more consistently in the NFL. It's like Sam Darnold seeing ghosts.
Mm.
Like no, that's actually the motion though.
No, I know.
He'll float back, he'll open up his entire body and his left foot will be backwards instead of throwing forwards, and it's just not like that's not how you're supposed to throw a football even in pressure. You're supposed to step up and just take the hit. As awful as that sounds, like if you're in the pocket, you have to be able to take a hit in pressure. Honestly, again, overall with Jaren Hall, I mean, again, I like him. I don't like the fact that he's 25 years old. If he was younger, it'd probably be a different story. He'd probably be higher on this list. I think that goes with a lot of quarterbacks on this list. Again, with that 6'1", 205 frame, he's comparable to Russell Wilson, who's about 5'10", 215. I think he plays a lot like Russell Wilson. He likes to be outside of the pocket, but he can throw from inside the pocket. He'd rather have bootlegs. He'd rather be able to do this. He doesn't see over the middle of the field well. But that's not a bad comparison for him. I think, again, the top fits the Bucks, the Lions, the Vikings, and the Seahawks are places where he can go and be a backup or have vertical offenses where he can unleash a deep ball. But if he goes to any one of these teams, they need their offensive line to protect him if he's going to play. I tried to find a spot for him where he would be a backup. The Bucks, obviously, he might be able to compete with Kyle Trask. I don't think so, and or whoever they bring in as a quarterback. But Jaren Hall, honestly, the summary for Jaren Hall is a great athlete with a great arm, or an above average to great arm. I wouldn't say it's necessarily bona fide great. Quick release, but there's a lot of concerns, like a lot of mechanical concerns.
I think his athleticism is what you are drafting him for.
Mm-hmm.
Like his athleticism is insane. Like he is extremely talented with that, and I think that's what you're hoping for when you draft Jaren Hall this year. Because like as you were saying, his mechanics are strugglesome. Like they do have some issues that can be fixed with the right coaching and stuff. But it's his athleticism that will put him above the rest.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's definitely what people like NFL teams will look for this year. And I'm not sure how I feel about the Seahawks fit. I don't think he would really have a great chance there.
See,
Just
I'm
'cause-
thinking, downfield passing. They've got DK, Tyler Lockett's still
yeah,
there for at
no.
least a couple years.
But I was also looking at their quarterback room, and I'm
Yeah.
not sure he can really compete with anyone in there.
Well, you don't bring him in to
I
compete with
mean,
Geno Smith right away. You bring him in. I
no, no,
mean,
no.
Drew Lock on the
But
back end, but
Drew Lock, though, I don't even think he can compete with Drew Lock right now.
I don't necessarily think that. I mean, right now, maybe give him a couple years and I think he'll be fine. And at this point, the Seahawks are in a position where they could give Geno a 2-year deal and probably feel halfway decent about their odds.
Yeah.
But I see what you're saying. I think he can compete with Drew Lock. I don't think Drew Lock's. I never thought Drew Lock was as good as advertised. It's just one of those things that I was just, on the tape. It just didn't. I didn't see it. But on that point, I understand why you're hesitant about the Seahawks there. I do think the Bucks, Lions, and Vikings are the better picks anyway. The Seahawks were the last fit. On that note, let's move to my favorite college quarterback, Max Duggan. I love Max Duggan. I don't care.
Oh, Max.
I'm not
Oh,
gonna.
Max.
I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, when I first put on the tape, I had a thought. Like, I thought I knew what I was gonna see on Max. A guy that I thought should be a converted wide receiver at this point in his career because of the fact that I didn't think he could make it as a quarterback in the NFL. Not gonna lie to you, I went back and I watched the Big 12 title game loss. I went back and watched the Michigan game, and then I went back and watched Kansas. We all know what happened in the national title game. I'm not putting that on Max Duggan. I think Georgia's defense was just too damn good. That's just how it's gonna be. They got smacked, obviously, but again, you're putting him as a position tier 3. This is a guy that should go in the 5th, 6th round. Maybe fringe 7th, which is what it's going to be position tier 4, which is later down the line. There's about 4 or 5 guys down the board where I'm like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be drafted. But to put Max Duggan into perspective, you got a 6'2", 210-pound frame. He's 21 years old. And honestly, I think he plays a little bit of a mix of Tim Tebow and Sam Ehlinger, where Sam Ehlinger has more of the frame and the body type, but he runs a lot like Tim Tebow. He does a lot of the passing stuff of Sam Ehlinger, where he throws the ball down the field, whereas he runs a lot like Tim Tebow, where he drops his shoulder, he'll try to run through you, he'll try to just make plays. And the leadership and charismatic aspect of him reminds me a lot of Tim Tebow, honestly, with the 07... Was it 07 Gators? I forget when Tim Tebow was in college.
06.
It wasn't 06. I think that was somebody else. I think
He won 2 years in a row.
I think it was 07 and 09. We'll get back to it. I'm not worried about it. But it reminds me a lot of Tim Tebow during his time at Florida. Just putting it that out there. I think this guy is probably the best leader in college football. You're not going to have any red flags on him. He's younger. He's 21 years old. And the first thing that you'll notice about Max Duggan is obviously the grit and grind play style of Max Duggan. He's got a lot of grit. He's not going to come out for small injuries. I mean, this dude's bleeding on the field, and he's just like, "Ah, whatever, give me the ball." Um, so, also, his dad is a high school football coach. Obviously, he understands the game of football. He's smart. He's also played a lot of games in college. I think he played upwards of 40. I think he was 13 and 16 as a starter headed into the year. So 29 games and then played another 13. So
He
52,
was
42,
he was actually
42.
not the starter coming into this year, which
So
is
he got
actually one of
benched.
my notes for that.
He got benched in camp, and the guy above him got hurt the first game of the year. So he
Yes,
started
he did.
12 games. Excuse me. He started 41 games over the course of his career.
Yes,
So
which
a lot of
I was
experience.
reading into that. I was reading into why, so like about his benching, and I saw one of his like quotes from it, and he was saying that I don't care about it. I'm here to win football games, and that means I can be a mentor to Chandler, who is the quarterback
Yep.
who took over, Chandler Morris. It's like if I could just be a mentor to him, that's all I want to do. If that
Exactly.
doesn't show good leadership, I don't know what the hell
Like
does, man.
that's the type of
Like
dude you're getting.
exactly, like that's awesome leadership to be able to be like, I don't care that I'm losing my playing time. I want to be a good mentor and a good friend to him.
Like
Like,
all he cares about is winning football games. All he
like
cares
well,
about is winning football games. On
speaking of winning football games,
he did a lot of that
they
this year.
did a lot
He did
of
a
that
lot of
this
that.
year.
No, and I mean honestly, getting to the more like football play, he's athletic enough to extend and create big plays, which we all saw all year long. And he can make all of the NFL throws. His arm strength, he has the arm strength to make all of the NFL throws. I'm not going to say he's got an Anthony Richardson type arm because he doesn't. He doesn't have a Will Levis type arm, but he can throw with the best of them. Like he can. His weaknesses are the fact that his mechanics are always varying, and he needs to work on the mechanics part of football. Like he needs to fine tune the little details. You can make all the big plays in the world. If your mechanics aren't good, you're not going to survive in the league. Patrick Mahomes did it for a while, but that's because he had Andy Reid, and honestly, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey were making huge plays constantly. And even with Patrick Mahomes' bad mechanics, he was still accurate enough to make it in the league, so his mechanics were outshined by the accuracy. Max Duggan's not like that. Um, his accuracy on all of his throws are average at best. He's not the most accurate dude. Speaking of accuracy, when it comes to Patrick Mahomes, you're not gonna get the most accurate throws in the world. There's a lot of times where he's behind the receiver. There's a lot of times where he's too high. There's a lot of times where he's too low. Like it, it's all over the place. It's not awful. Like it's not unfixable. That will come with the mechanics fix, but his accuracy is average at best right now. Also, you worry about the injuries with his frame and play style. I know that he hasn't had a ton of injuries, like because of the fact that he's so gritty. He doesn't care about the small stuff, yada yada yada. But at 6'2", 210 pounds in the NFL, you're not going to be able to do what you're doing in college. You're not going to be able to run through linebackers and strong safeties the way that you were on that national championship run. And mind you, I mean, again, you're looking at a guy that's gritty, he's tough, he's good, he's a great leader, he's a great locker room guy. And so you kind of take it with the good, but at the same time, you do not want your career to be defined by injuries like we've seen so many times. So those are his kind of weaknesses. I'll break down the film a little bit, but Kyle, give me your thoughts.
With Max Duggan, I'm very impressed with what he brought to this team. But with that said, he also had a lot of star power around him. And like he has a lot of NFL talent that he played with. Quentin Johnson was an amazing wide receiver for him this year.
I also think their
Um,
second receiver is going to end up being an NFL prospect at some
yeah.
point. I forget his name right
Uh,
now, but on tape he flashed.
is it Darius Davis? Is that
No,
who it
no,
is?
the other guy.
The other one?
He plays a
What's
lot like
his
Quentin
name?
Johnston. Goes up, gets 50-50
Yeah,
balls. I forget his name. It's fine. It's not a huge deal.
yeah. I forgot. I forgot who it is too. They also had Kendry Miller, the
Mm-hmm.
running back, and so like Max Duggan had a lot of great help. He didn't have to do it all, which I think is what he will. I think that's what he needs essentially. He needs
Yeah.
someone who can be. He needs to be able to trust in his receivers. He needs to be able to trust in the run game. He can't be the one and only aspect of the offense. And which is great because there's a lot of teams out there that just need a quarterback that has that talent. So if he gets drafted, which I'm sure he will. I'm sure he could be a fourth, fifth round pick.
He'll probably
Honestly,
end up getting picked somewhere in the 6th or 7th. I have him
yeah,
in that 3 to 6 talent range, but it'll be closer to 5 or 6.
yeah. It all depends on
Unless he absolutely flashes at the combine and the pro day, which I don't
right,
think he like will pop off anybody's screen. But
right. But like they had the Horned Frogs. Love the mascot, by the way. Amazing mascot.
roll it, no
Um,
toad.
dude. They had amazing wins this year.
Yeah, they did.
And Max Duggan was a big part of that, like massive part of that. Especially, I really think they got gypped in the Big 12 title game. Not like gypped, but like they should have won that, man. Like that was so bad that they lost that. But he looked so good in that game. Like he was getting beat up. I mean,
Bro,
like
I
beat
don't
up in that game.
I don't know a quarterback that can make a 50% completion percentage look so good. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, even in the
He
Michigan semis, like, dude was 14 of 29. His completion percentage was under 50%, and everybody's still like, this is that guy.
like
Like,
even earlier in the year when they beat Kansas State originally earlier in the year when they beat him,
yeah.
he looked great. Like he had 3 touchdowns, throwing for 280 yards in that game. Like this is the guy you can trust in to
The
at least
ex
get the job done.
the extra note
You
on
know?
Max Duggan too is that 5 out of his 8 interceptions came in the last 3 games of the year.
Yeah.
So when he played his best competition, he turned the ball over more, considering the fact that he was probably playing better defenses, and Kansas State was like, we're hyped. Big 12 title game, it happens. With Michigan and Georgia, obviously you're playing, two of the best defenses in the country, like without a doubt, two of the best defenses in the country. And I'm not going to give him a pass for that, but I will say that most of the time he takes care of the ball, at least this year he did. And I'm not going to hold him accountable, or I'm not going to hold it against him that he threw five interceptions of the 8 interceptions he threw all year in the last 3 games.
Yeah.
I just did want to note that. Also, I watched the Kansas game a little bit because it looked like one of those, like, pretty consistently. He put up almost the exact same stat line against Oklahoma the week before, which I thought was interesting. He had 23 of 33 for 300 some odd yards, 3 touchdowns, and at
Mhm.
least a rushing touchdown on the ground, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. It literally looked like the exact same stat line. I thought it was funny. Um, in some I will also note the fact that the ball doesn't come off as tight as you'd like want it to, as tight of a spiral you'd want it to. It's kind of sometimes floaty, which you wouldn't want to see, but that can be fixed. That's not a huge thing. That's again a mechanics issue. He does throw in breaking routes very well, which led to a lot of Quentin Johnston catch and runs, which makes that's what a lot of playmakers like to do anyway. Like if you're gonna hit him on an in breaking route, the deep in 15, 10 yard in route and or a slant, he's very good at that, surprisingly, considering the fact that, he's only 6'2", and sometimes those guys have a little bit of trouble. I mean, literally just ask Aaron Rodgers about it. He's been very open about the fact that he can't see over the middle of the field sometimes. Like,
Mhm.
he's been open about this fact. Um, so being able to hit those routes and create plays over the middle is something that Max Duggan does very well. Again, like you noted, he's playing with what is currently my wide receiver one on the board. I mean, I'm going to go through and look at Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, all those guys at some point. But as of right now, I think Quentin Johnson, especially with watching the way that Max Duggan played, watching these games and watching Quentin Johnson kind of dominate them, kind of love him. But the overall story here, again, with Max Duggan is you're getting someone who's going to be a leader in your locker room. He doesn't necessarily ever need to start for you because he can be a long-time backup and be a serviceable backup and just come in and
Be
lead
okay with
games.
it, and
Yeah,
he
and be
would be
okay with it.
okay. Exactly. Yep.
And, I mean, again, I think he's going to compete. I think he's going to try to compete for a starting job. He reminds me of one of those guys who's just always going to be ready no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think his best fits at this point in time are Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Las Vegas, and Seattle. I think Las Vegas is probably the best fit of the bunch because I think they need someone in the locker room like that at this point. I think Josh McDaniels needs someone like that in the locker room. Tampa Bay would be good. I think Green Bay might be the second best fit. I like the fact that they have tall playmakers, i.e. Quentin Johnston, i.e. Christian Watson on the other back end, Alan Lazard, guys who can just go up and get the ball the way that Max Duggan's used to playing it. He did a lot of pushing the ball down the field at TCU. A lot of guys have inflated completion percentages because all they do is throw bubble screens. Max Duggan is not that guy. He takes shots. He is not. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll play within whatever confines of whatever system he finds himself in because I think he's that guy. But a lot of those guys that you see have 70% completion percentage, 5 of their passes were fucking bubble screens. Max Duggan is not throwing any bubble screens. I promise you that. I don't think I saw one on tape. I don't think I saw one. There might have been 1 or 2 like actual wide receiver screens, but there was nothing easy for Max Duggan.
No.
Honestly, so those are the top fits. I think again, this is one of those dudes you pick up in the late round of the draft. He's a great backup for you for a while. He's a guy you want in the locker room. And honestly, I think that helps his draft stock. Plus the fact that he's only 21, like that is a dude you want. Like you can develop him. He can be a 3-year project where if all of a sudden he finds himself in game time action and he's playing well, you're happy with it. Like I like Max Duggan. I don't think he's anything special, but he's my favorite college quarterback at this point just because of the way he plays and the person he is.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. He's definitely someone who what you're gonna, kind of what you're gonna get with Max Duggan. Like there aren't really a whole lot of surprises.
That's funny because that's a great transition to what you're gonna get with Stetson Bennett because that's literally in my notes. You know what you're gonna get with the next guy, Stetson Bennett. You know what you're gonna get.
I loved him, man.
I know.
He brought me a lot of joy as a Georgia fan.
I know you're a Dogs fan, dog. I know. Oh man, again a position tier 3. At this point, you're gonna find position tier 3 and 4 guys. You're not gonna find 1 and 2 guys. I only have 1 position tier 1 guy on the board. Last year, I wouldn't have had any, so that like Kenny Pickett and Malik Willis were not top early first round talents for me. Honestly, I probably would have put both of them in low tier 2. I really like this quarterback class, though. I think it's better than last year's class by like a mile.
Oh, yeah,
by a mile.
So much better.
So, there are some great things to say about Stetson Bennett. There are some really bad things to say about Stetson Bennett. I will tell you that when I look at the position tiers, I'm only taking into account what I see on tape. I'm not taking into account the fact that there's been some off-the-field issues with Max Duggan. I will tell you that I will take that into account where I say where he's going to get drafted in a few minutes. But I'm not taking that into account when I do the position tier where I think he's a 3rd to 6th round guy. You start with the frame. 5'11", 190 pounds. That concerns you. Just like I said, it concerns you with Bryce Young. Just like I said, it concerns you with Jaren Hall. Just like I said, it concerns you with Jake Haener. That concerns you. Like, keeping consistent the fact that his frame is 5'11", 190 pounds, and that concerns you. The off-the-field stuff concerns you, and the fact that he's 25 years old concerns you. I would equate Stetson Bennett's play with a less athletic Seneca Wallace. And for those of you who do not know who that is, go look up who Matt Hasselbeck's backup was in Seattle. He's a GOAT Madden quarterback because of the fact that he could run around in the early days of Madden where that was absolutely unstoppable, but he actually was not wonderful in real life. He started for the Browns for a bit. He was Matt Hasselbeck's backup for a while. He was a league journeyman. He was a league backup. But he always found a job because he was good enough to be a backup. Like, he was one of the top tier backups in the league for a long time. I would say 8 to 10 years. I don't really we'll get into the fits and my notes there later. Strengths, obviously he's incredibly accurate. I would say that he's probably one of the more accurate throwers in the draft class, minus CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, and maybe Jake Haener, who are all accuracy quarterbacks. He does play within himself. He doesn't try to do too much. He knows his own limitations, which I think is something that a lot of quarterbacks at this stage can't say. He reads defenses pretty well, which again a lot of rookies can't say that they do that. And his arm is serviceable. It's not elite, but it's good enough to play at the next level, and you know who you're getting. You've seen him take 2 years worth of snaps at this point. You know exactly who you're getting when it comes to Stetson Bennett. Weaknesses, his frame is awful, which we've already talked about. He's an older rookie, which we've already talked about. And he played with some of the best playmakers in the NCAA, which makes it like he's throwing to a lot of open space. And even when he's not, Brock Bowers can make any play look wonderful. I absolutely adore Brock Bowers. I think he's going to go inside the top 10 next year when he comes out. I think Brock Bowers is an absolute freak.
He is amazing. I love him.
I don't know where Georgia keeps getting these dudes, but Brock Bowers is actually unfair. I don't think there's a single dude in the NCAA who can just tackle him one on one. I don't think there is. I don't think there's one dude.
Yeah, no, he is an absolute
Like freak.
talent. Freak talent. Definitely love him on the team. That's for sure. He will make any NFL team
Very
amazing.
happy. I hope he ends up
Very
in.
happy.
I hope he ends up on the Patriots. I don't care.
No,
I hope he
but
does.
in order for that to happen, you guys have to suck next year. So I hope you're
Honestly,
okay.
I would take it. That's wide receiver. That's wide receiver and tight end one right there. I don't care. No, honestly, with Stetson Bennett again, you know what you're getting, Kyle. I know you've watched him a lot. I've watched a decent amount of tape. I've watched him a lot. I watch a lot of Alabama Georgia games. I watch a lot of the college football playoff games. And I think a lot of people think Stetson Bennett is better than he is because it looks better in the moment than it does on tape. I mean, I would say that a lot of people overrate Stetson Bennett because they think it looks really great live, and then you run it back on the tape and it really doesn't look that wonderful.
Mhm.
That's my take on Stetson Bennett, which is fine.
That's one way to look at it, I guess.
It looks
mean,
better.
sure.
It looks better live than it does on the tape. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like it looks like a lot of people think he's more athletic than he is because he looks more athletic live than he does when it's actually running back on film. People think he outruns Will Anderson Jr. at some points, which isn't true. He's got a 5 yard head start, and Will Anderson Jr. ends up like a yard behind him. I mean, give me your thoughts on Stetson Bennett. I know you love him, but like, just give me
I
your
do
honest
love
thoughts
him.
on Stetson Bennett.
Honest thoughts on Stetson Bennett. He is not going to be a great NFL quarterback. Like I love him. He's amazing in college, but in order for him to be successful, he needed a very defense heavy roster.
Mm-hmm.
You saw like that's how Kirby Smart runs this team. He runs a lot of defensive talent first. Like you
Yeah.
saw in both national championship games that we won, the defense came out massive in both of them.
Bro.
Practically shut out TCU, only allowing one touchdown. Like
On the first drive of the fucking game.
exactly, like basically shut them out. Like we thought it was going to be somewhat competitive when it was what 14-7 at one point. That was
It was 7-7 at one point. I was like, okay,
7-7.
this game's gonna be good. Like Max,
Yeah.
like I thought the TCU offense looked very competent the first drive of the game, and then it just went away.
Yeah,
Like all of it went away.
that's Georgia's defense. And then they looked great against Alabama last year. Like obviously it was a lot more competitive of a national championship last year when you have two SEC teams in it. But the defense still showed up and was able to stop them when they needed to.
That's fair.
Without that in the NFL, Stetson Bennett is not going to be successful. His 5'11 frame is going to be a downside. His accuracy is going to be a downside. He doesn't have a lot of great arm strength. His age is a massive downside. Like teams are going to look at that and go, "You have so many things we need to work on. You're already
And you're 5'11", 190.
halfway. Yeah, like you're already halfway through what like Lamar. He's the same age as Lamar Jackson. Lamar
Who's been in
Jackson's
the league for 5 years.
5 years. Like yeah, like he's he's 2 years younger than
Dude, this is
Patrick Mahomes.
like this is like me playing quarterback at Georgia right now. Like I'm at the end of my law school
essentially-
career, and it's like me playing quarterback at Georgia right now.
It's essentially like exactly like
And I
it
don't
would
like
be us going back to Plymouth State and,
And playing
on the football. Like that's what it would be right now.
And again, we're not like I love Stetson Bennett, I really do. I see a lot of people comparing him to Russell Wilson, and I don't think that's like an accurate. Like that's not accurate. Like Seneca Wallace is the most accurate comparison in my mind. I think they play incredibly similar, except Seneca Wallace was just a little bit more athletic when it comes to like in terms of speed and dynamic football plays. Stetson Bennett all over like I think he's a guy you want in your locker room. I think the distractions are going to hurt his draft stock a little bit. Like, before the distractions, I could see someone taking a flyer in the fourth, fifth round, which is where I think his talent is. But combine that with the frame, age, and off the field issues that we've seen come in. I mean, seventh round pick now. Like, you could see
I'll
Stetson
be
Bennett. You
honest.
could see Stetson Bennett not get drafted because of stuff like that.
His character issues. It's just him being a dumb idiot, right?
Like, he's 25. Like, if he's
I know.
21, maybe you're like, okay, you're 21. You're being a child. Like, it is what it is. Like, if he's Max Duggan's age right now, that's more permissible. Like, bro, you're 25. Like, your brain is fully developed at this point. I don't know what you want me to say. like,
Fully. Oh boy.
I
Yeah.
I can't excuse it for him being a dumb kid. Like,
I
because
know.
he's not a
No,
kid.
that's fair. Getting back to the football side of
Yeah.
Stetson Bennett. He did look really great in college.
Mm-hmm.
Granted that this is a 25-year-old playing against 20, 21-year-olds,
Yeah.
but he did look really good when he played. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games of over 300 passing yards.
Mm-hmm.
That's not someone who can't play, right?
No,
Like
of course.
he is, like with Stetson Bennett, he is going to be a good backup for you.
Yeah. Which is, again,
But
why I think he's like Seneca Wallace. I think he's a good long-term backup for you. I think he
yeah,
plays probably 10 years in the league as a journeyman backup. He'll make his money, and then he'll go. I mean, again, I don't put a lot into the statistical part of college football unless you're dominating like an SEC or a Big Ten. Solely because of the fact that, again, you get so much variety, and there's these weird, like, Colt Brennan type years where some random dude in the Western Athletic Conference throws for 50 touchdowns, and you're kind of like, oh, okay. But I will say that his touchdowns dropped from last year to this year, which I thought was interesting considering he had double the amount of passing attempts and way more yards. Like, he doubled the amount of yards, which I just thought it was really interesting that his touchdowns
yeah,
weren't
that is a
not
little,
doubled, but like
you know.
up. Like, I thought that was going to be something that would go up with all of that. But on that note, I mean, again, we'll talk about the top fits. Again, I think he's comparable to a less athletic Seneca Wallace. Again, for those of you who do not know who that is, go look up who Seneca Wallace is. I don't know how else to explain him to you. But he'd benefit from playing, I think, with a smaller quarterback ahead of him. So the Russell Wilsons, the Kyler Murrays, and or the Tua Tagovailoas of the world. I think he would be a great fit behind Russ in Denver, especially with Sean Payton being able to help him out over there. I think they'd get him a quarterback coach that can help him fix some of the issues. Kyler playing behind Kyler Murray would make sense because I think he would fit the system a little bit, especially, I mean, they did just change head coaches, so who knows what the system's going to look like, but I don't think they're going to drastically change a lot of what they do on offense. And or playing with or behind Tua Tagovailoa because they're going to need somebody consistent behind Tua who can step in and play football. Stetson Bennett does not have an injury history for all that I know, at the very least. Like, he's never had a major injury. He might be dinged up here and there, but who isn't? And so Mike McDaniel might find it attractive that he kind of plays similar to Tua where he can run the RPO and do things like that. I think you'd rather have Hendon Hooker than Stetson Bennett, which I've said earlier. But I think those three places are probably the best fits because I think playing behind a smaller quarterback who can teach him how to play quarterback in the NFL as a smaller quarterback would benefit Stetson Bennett a lot.
The team that I was honestly going to say I think is a great fit for him because of the defense that they have, and they still have the talent on wide receiver that he can throw to, is actually Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Jalen Hurts, he isn't as small as Stetson, but he's out of the smaller end of quarterbacks, being at
He's
6'1".
he's 6 foot
right?
exactly. He's a
6 foot
smaller
exactly.
quarterback.
He's a small quarterback. So
His frame is good. Like, he's built in that Russell Wilson frame where you're not as worried about it. You're more worried about the over the field vision than you are injuries. But no, I like that. I think that's a good play. I think that's a good place for Stetson Bennett to find himself. I genuinely think Nick Sirianni's offense would be wonderful for Stetson Bennett. I don't think he can run the option as well as Jalen Hurts. Obviously, I don't think he's that athletic.
No.
don't get it
He's
twisted.
definitely not a replacement for
Don't,
Jalen Hurts
like
by
don't
any means.
don't get
No.
it twisted. Stetson Bennett can run that and be comfortable. Like he's not athletic, but he's not that athletic.
Right.
On that note,
So,
guys, I think we're done here.
mhm.
Go follow the socials, High School Backups on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Make sure to like the video, subscribe. I'm going to continue to push these out for you. Me and Kyle are both going to do this. Next up, we've got more the tier 3, what I like to call scrambling quarterbacks. So you've got the Malik Cunninghams, Jaden Daniels, and Dorian Thomas Robinsons. That'll be the next 3 up, and then we'll have the last 4, which are Tyson Badgett, Tommy DeVito, Aiden O'Connell, and Tanner Morgan. And then this series will be done. But we appreciate you all tuning in. Again, make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you later. Peace.